think level 1 for Earth is probably the biological evolutionary process.
Mm-hmm.
It's like going from single-cell organisms to early humans. Then maybe level 2 is whatever's happening inside our minds and creating ideas and creating technologies. That's like evolutionary process of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And then multiplanetary is interesting. Is that fundamentally different from what we're doing here on Earth? Probably, because it allows us to like exponentially scale.
It delays the Malthusian trap, right? It's a way to keep the playing field to make the playing field get larger, so that it can accommodate more of our stuff, more of us, and that's a good thing. But I don't know if it like fully solves this issue of this thing called Moloch, which we haven't talked about yet, but which is basically, I call it the god of unhealthy competition.
Yeah, let's go to Moloch. What's Moloch? You did a great video on Moloch, and one aspect of it, the application of it to one aspect of
Instagram beauty filters. Very niche. I wanted to start off small. Moloch was originally coined as well. So apparently back in the Canaanite times, it was this ancient Carthaginian. I can never say it. Carthaginian, somewhere around 300 BC or 200 AD. I don't know. There was supposedly this death cult who would sacrifice their children to this awful demon god thing they called Moloch, in order to get power, to win wars. So really dark, horrible things. And it was literally about child sacrifice. Whether they actually existed or not, we don't know. But in mythology, they did. And this god that they worshipped was this thing called Moloch. And then, I don't know, it seemed like it was kind of quiet throughout history, in terms of mythology beyond that, until this movie, Metropolis, in 1927, talked about this. You see that there was this incredible futuristic city that everyone was living great in, but then the protagonist goes underground into the sewers and sees that the city is run by this machine, and this machine basically would just kill the workers all the time because it was just so hard to keep it running. They were always dying, so there was all this suffering that was required in order to keep the city going. And then the protagonist has this vision that this machine is actually this demon Moloch. So again, it's this sort of mechanistic consumption of humans in order to get more power. And then Allen Ginsberg wrote a poem in the 60s, which incredible poem called Howl, about this thing Moloch. And a lot of people sort of quite understandably take the interpretation of that he's talking about capitalism. But then the sort of piece de resistance that's moved Moloch into this idea of game theory was Scott Alexander of Slate Style Codex. Wrote this incredible one. Literally, I think it might be my favorite piece of writing of all time. It's called Meditations on Moloch. Everyone must go read it. And
Slate Codex is a blog.
It's a blog, yes. We can link to it in the show notes or something, right? No, don't.
Yes. But I like how you assume I have a professional operation going on here. I shall try to remember.
What do you want? You're giving the impression of it.
Yeah. I'll please. If I don't, please somebody in the comments remind me. If you don't know this blog, it's one of the best blogs ever. Probably, yes. You should probably be following it.
Yes.
Are blogs still a thing? I think it's still a thing.
Yeah, he's migrated onto Substack, but yeah, it's still a blog. Anyway,
Substack better not fuck things up. But
I hope not. Yeah, I hope they don't turn Molochy. Which will mean something to people when we continue.
When I stop interrupting for once.
No,
go ahead. Yeah.
So anyway, he writes this piece, Meditations on Moloch, and basically he analyzes the poem and he's like, okay, so it seems to be something relating to where competition goes wrong. And, Moloch was historically this thing of where people would sacrifice a thing that they care about, in this case, children, their own children, in order to gain power, a competitive advantage. And if you look at almost everything that sort of goes wrong in our society, it's that same process. So with the Instagram beauty filters thing, if you're trying to become a famous Instagram model, you are incentivized to post the hottest pictures of yourself that you can. You're trying to play that game. There's a lot of hot women on Instagram. How do you compete against them? You post really hot pictures, and that's how you get more likes. As technology gets better, more makeup techniques come along. And then more recently, these beauty filters where like at the touch of a button, it makes your face look absolutely incredible compared to your natural face. These technologies come along. Everyone is incentivized to that short-term strategy. But over on net, it's bad for everyone because now everyone is kind of like feeling like they have to use these things, and these things like they make you like. The reason why I talked about them in this video is because I noticed it myself. Like I was trying to grow my Instagram for a while. I've given up on it now, but and I noticed these filters, how good they made me look, and I'm like, well. I know that everyone else is kind of doing it.
Go subscribe to Liv's Instagram.
Please, so I don't have to use the filters.
Post a bunch of, make it blow up.
It's
with those, you felt the pressure, actually.
Exactly. These short-term incentives to do this, like, this thing that, like, either sacrifices your integrity or something else in order to, like, stay competitive, which on aggregate turns creates this like sort of race to the bottom spiral where everyone else ends up in a situation which is worse off than if they hadn't started, than they were before. Kind of like if at a football stadium, the system is so badly designed, a competitive system of like everyone sitting and having a view, that if someone at the very front stands up to get an even better view, it forces everyone else behind to like adopt that same strategy just to get to where they were before. But now everyone's stuck standing up. So you need this like top-down God's eye coordination to make it go back to the better state. But from within the system, you can't actually do that. So that's kind of what this Moloch thing is. It's this thing that makes people sacrifice values in order to optimize for the winning the game in question, the short-term game.
But this Moloch, can you attribute it to any one centralized source, or is it an emergent phenomena from a large collection of people?
Exactly that. It's an emergent phenomena. It's a force of game theory. It's a force of bad incentives on a multi-agent system where you've got Prisoner's Dilemma is technically a kind of Moloch-y system as well, but it's just a two-player thing. But another word for Moloch is multipolar trap, where basically you just got a lot of different people all competing for some kind of prize, and it would be better if everyone didn't do this one shitty strategy, but because that strategy gives you a short-term advantage, everyone's incentivized to do it, and so everyone ends up doing it.
So the responsibility for, social media is a really nice place for a large number of people to play game theory, and so they also have the ability to then design the rules of the game. And is it on them to try to anticipate what kind of, to do the thing that poker players are doing, to run simulation?
Ideally, that would have been great if, Mark Zuckerberg and Jack and all the Twitter founders and everyone, if they had at least just run a few simulations of how their algorithms would, different types of algorithms would turn out for society, that would have been great.
That's really difficult to do that kind of deep philosophical thinking about humanity, actually. So not kind of this level of how do we optimize engagement, or what brings people joy in the short term, but how is this thing going to change the way people see the world? How is it going to get morphed in iterative games played into something that will change society forever? That requires some deep thinking. I hope there's meetings like that inside companies, but I haven't seen them.
That's the problem, and it's difficult because when you're starting up a social media company, you're aware that you've got investors to please, there's bills to pay, there's only so much R&D you can afford to do. You've got all these incredible pressures and bad incentives to get on and just build your thing as quickly as possible and start making money. And I don't think anyone intended when they built these social media platforms, and just to preface this, so the reason why the social media is relevant because it's a very good example of everyone these days is optimizing for clicks, whether it's the social media platforms themselves because every click gets more impressions, and impressions pay for they get advertising dollars, or whether it's individual influencers or, whether it's the New York Times or whoever, they're trying to get their story to go viral. So everyone's got this bad incentive of using, as you called it, the clickbait industrial complex. That's a very Moloch-y system because everyone is now using worse and worse tactics in order to try and win this attention game. And I don't think anyone intended when they built. Everyone these days is optimizing for clicks, whether it's the social media platforms themselves, because every click gets more impressions, and impressions pay for they get advertising dollars, or whether it's individual influencers or whether it's the New York Times or whoever, they're trying to get their story to go viral. So everyone's got this bad incentive of using as you called it, the clickbait industrial complex. That's a very Moloch-y system because everyone is now using worse and worse tactics in order to try and win this attention game. So ideally these companies would have had enough slack in the beginning in order to run these experiments to see, okay, what are the ways this could possibly go wrong for people? What are the ways that Moloch, they should be aware of this concept of Moloch and realize that whenever you have a highly competitive multi-agent system, which social media is a classic example of, millions of agents all trying to compete for likes and so on, and you try and bring all this complexity down into very small metrics, such as number of likes, number of retweets, whatever the algorithm optimizes for, that is a guaranteed recipe for this stuff to go wrong and become a race to the bottom.
I think there should be an honesty in founders. I think there's a hunger for that kind of transparency of we don't know what the fuck we're doing. This is a fascinating experiment. We're all running as a human civilization. Let's try this out.
Yes.
And actually just be honest about this, that we're all these weird rats in a maze. None of us are controlling it. There's this kind of sense the founders, the CEO of Instagram or whatever, Mark Zuckerberg, has a control, and he's with strings playing people. No,
he's at the mercy of this like everyone else. He's just trying to do his best.
And I think putting on a smile and doing over polished videos about how Instagram and Facebook are good for you, I think is not the right way to actually ask some of the deepest questions we get to ask as a society.
Right.
How do we design the game such that we build a better world?
I think a big part of this as well is people. There's this philosophy, particularly in Silicon Valley, of techno-optimism. Technology will solve all our issues. And there's a steelman argument to that, where yes, technology has solved a lot of problems and can potentially solve a lot of future ones, but it can also, always a double-edged sword, and particularly as technology gets more and more powerful, and we've now got big data, and we're able to do all kinds of psychological manipulation with it and so on. Technology is not a values neutral thing. People think, I used to always think this myself, it's this naive view that, technology is completely neutral. It's the humans that either make it good or bad. No, to the point we're at now, the technology that we are creating, they are social technologies. They literally dictate how humans now form social groups and so on. Beyond that, it also then that gives rise to the memes that we then coalesce around. And that, if you have the stack that way, where it's technology driving social interaction, which then drives mimetic culture and which ideas become popular, that's Moloch. Mm-hmm. And we need the other way around. We need to figure out what are the good memes, what are the good values that we think we need to optimize for, that makes people happy and healthy and keeps society as robust and safe as possible. Then figure out what the social structure around those should be, and only then do we figure out technology. But we're doing the other way around, and as much as I love in many ways the culture of Silicon Valley, and I do think that technology has, I don't want to knock it. It's done so many wonderful things for us. Same with capitalism. We have to be honest with ourselves. We're getting to a point where we are losing control of this very powerful machine that we have created.
Can you redesign the machine within the game? Can you just can you understand the game enough? Okay, this is the game, and this is how we start to reemphasize the memes that matter, the memes that bring out the best in us. The way I try to be in real life, and the way I try to be online is to be about kindness and love. And I feel like I'm sometimes get like criticized for being naive and all those kinds of things, but I feel like I'm just trying to live within this game. I'm trying
to be authentic.
Yeah, but also like, hey, it's kind of fun to do this. Like, you guys should try this too. That's like trying to redesign some aspects of the game within the game. Is that possible?
I don't know, but I think we should try. I don't think we have an option but to try.
Well, the other option is to create new companies or to pressure companies or anyone who has control of the rules of the game.
I think we need to be doing all of the above. I think we need to be thinking hard about what are the kind of positive, healthy memes. As Elon said, he who controls the memes controls the universe.
He said that.
I think he did. Yeah. But there's truth to that. Yeah. There is wisdom in that, because memes have driven history. We are a cultural species. That's what sets us apart from chimpanzees and everything else. We have the ability to learn and evolve through culture, as opposed to biology or classic physical constraints. And that means culture is incredibly powerful, and we can create and become victim to very bad memes or very good ones. But we do have some agency over which memes, but not only put out there, but we also subscribe to. So I think we need to take that approach. We also need to, because I don't want I'm making this video right now called The Attention Wars, which is about how Moloch, the media machine is this Moloch machine. Is this kind of blind, dumb thing where everyone is optimizing for engagement in order to win their share of the attention pie. And then if you zoom out, it's really Moloch that's pulling the strings, because the only thing that benefits from this in the end, our information ecosystem is breaking down. You look at the state of the US, we're in a civil war. It's just not a physical war. It's an information war, and people are becoming more fractured in terms of what their actual shared reality is. Truly, an extreme left person and an extreme right person, they literally live in different worlds in their minds at this point, and it's getting more and more amplified. And this force is like a razor blade pushing through everything. It doesn't matter how innocuous a topic is; it will find a way to split into this, bifurcated culture war, and it's fucking terrifying.
Because that maximizes attention, and that's like an emergent Moloch type force,
right?
That takes anything, any topic, and cuts through it so that it can split nicely into two groups. One that's
it's whatever. Yeah, all everyone is trying to do within the system is just maximize whatever gets them the most attention, because they're just trying to make money so they can keep their thing going, right? Yeah. And the way the best emotion for getting attention, because it's not just about attention on the internet, it's engagement. That's the key thing, right? In order for something to go viral, you need people to actually engage with it. They need to comment or retweet or whatever. And of all the emotions that there's 7 classic shared emotions that studies have found that all humans, even from previously uncontacted tribes, have. Some of those are negative, sadness, disgust, anger, etc. Some are positive, happiness, excitement, and so on. The one that happens to be the most useful for the internet is anger, because anger it's such an active emotion. If you want people to engage, if someone's scared, and I'm not just talking out my ass here, there are studies here that have looked into this. Whereas if someone's disgusted or fearful, they actually tend to then be I don't want to deal with this. So they're less likely to actually engage and share it and so on. They're just going to be ugh. Whereas if they're enraged by a thing, well, now they're that triggers all the old tribalism emotions. And so that's how then things get sort of spread, much more easily. They outcompete all the other memes in the ecosystem.